I'll feed anybody, but I'm not for everybody. My name is Chef Derrick Green, and I find people that have turned their life's experiences into ingredients they use to feed others. We're redefining soul food. These people have turned their adversities into their advantages. This is the Sauce of Life show, and let's go. Kim Davis, welcome to the Sauce of Life. This podcast is about people that have taken their life experiences and turned those into ingredients that they then use to feed others. So, awesome, Kim Davis. Introduce yourself to the world. Let them know who you are.
It is good to talk to you, Derrick Green, my friend, whom we met this past summer in Alaska at your wonderful Waffles and Whatnot restaurant. I want to tell you before I tell more about myself that it was the time of our lives, not just mine, but the time of our lives, the group that came. And since that time, you and I have stayed connected, and we've seen each other one other time at a conference in Nashville. And we just continue to share about our ongoing progresses and successes with the things that are purposeful in our lives. So having said that, I live in Montgomery, Alabama. Today is Tuesday. It's about 84 degrees. I love warm weather. I love hot weather. When it's 95 degrees, everybody's just excited about being outside because it's the South, it's summer. And sometimes we have 94 even in late September. We did this year. We've had a very hot summer. But what I do here in Montgomery, I have my own business, Kim and Company Communications. And Derrick, let me say, Kim and Company continues to evolve as I meet people like you and others, and we talk about purpose, and we talk about experiences, and we network and build relationships. Sometimes those kinds of conversations turn into opportunities. And so what Kim and Company does, and I've been doing this now for the past, it's kind of hard to believe, for the past 25, probably going on nearly 30 years, Kim and Company does media. We do public relations, we do community relations, and for a good part of that, I've done governmental relations or lobbying. Sometimes I don't like using that word, but I've been involved in the political process now for 20, 25, 30 years, nearly going on 30 years. And I've come to understand and appreciate the process. I started very green. I had no idea who was what or what to do. I remember a lobbying group that I was working for at that time. They pointed to a state senator and they told that state senator, go tell Senator Escott to vote yes on whatever bill it was. And I thought, well, is that all it is to lobbying? And I told her, and I thought, man, I think I would like that. And for the past several years, I have enjoyed it. I have to say, there is a thrill, quite frankly, when you go in and you are trying to talk to legislators about whatever your issue is. And you count votes. Counting votes is always important because either you're trying to pass a bill or you're trying to kill a bill. It's certainly easier to kill a bill than to pass a bill. But when you're counting votes, you're building relationships and you're talking to legislators who you've known and have gotten to know for many, many years. And you hope that they like your issues, like the group that you work with, and want to have impact, quite frankly, back home. So over the years, it's been interesting to watch even how politics in Alabama has evolved or have evolved. When I started, the Democrats, if you will, were in control. And things were fun back then, back during those days. And what I mean by that, a legislator's word, you could count on it. If he said, yes, I'm voting with you, you could count that yes vote. And if he said no, then you could count the no vote. But as the politics changed, so did the leadership. And so did the process, meaning it's not been the same. Let me just say, it's not been the same, and it's not been as enjoyable. One of the things that I point to is when the Democrats were in control, Wednesday is what we call committee day. Well, all of the bills have to go and be heard and debated in a committee. And committee meetings were always in the morning, probably up until about noon or 1 o'clock, because after that, legislators like to go and have what they called green therapy or environmental research, meaning they love going to play golf, basically, is what that boiled down to. But you knew that the meetings were always in the morning and the afternoon was their time to do what they wanted to do. Now, with the Republicans in charge, you can have committee meetings on Wednesday as late as 4 o'clock. So that's changed. And it's not quite the same kind of fun, if you will. It's not the same process of what I'm used to or what I was used to or was introduced to years ago. And so the bills are different. You still have special interest groups who do run the show, I have to say. And so you still have to count votes and you still have to ask people to vote with you on certain issues. And certainly what that means is you've got to build relationships along the way. So I have enjoyed it. I have decided that that's probably not something I'm going to want to continue for. Planning for this to be my last quadrennium. In Alabama and in many states, of course, our state legislators are elected every 4 years, both the House and the Senate. And so after this quadrennium, probably are going to look to see if there are some other kinds of related opportunities. I don't want to shut the door totally because you've built relationships and these are good friendships too. I've got a couple of legislators who I call on frequently just to check and see how they're doing. And, those are the kinds of folks who are your buddies, your friends, and you do want to keep in touch with them. But politics has gotten a lot more chaotic. When you have a super majority, you expect that. You just do. It's just the way it is. And you can't really pass great legislation, at least legislation that you would consider great, if you are a Democrat, let me just say, because you don't have the votes. And so the process is not the same.
Throughout my life, I've avoided or tried to avoid politics like the plague. And I realized that as a young man, I was often taught that you can't trust politicians, that they change like their underwear, their positions, that they flip-flop. There was all type of negative stereotypes and things related to politics. Hearing you and the passion, and we've had some conversations before, but understanding your passion around this, lobbying and being able to affect change through the political spectrum, where did that originate originally? Like, was this something as a little girl, or was it something that, like a short story that you shared later? And then relationship building, because politics is about relationships, as I understand it.
It is.
So where'd that come from?
Well, I will say politics was not anything that I sought. It was not on my radar at all. Trust me when I tell you. And I say that because my background is broadcasting. I am a former news anchor and a news reporter and a news producer. And so I remember very vividly one day as a news reporter, the producer, the assignment editor rather, he wanted me to go down to the legislature and cover whatever story was going on that particular day. And unless you understand the process, unless you know it, it can be a maze. And I thought, this is not where I want to be. I remember also, even in school, we had a political science class, broadcast political science class that we had to take. And we had to literally travel about 50 miles. I went to Troy. At that time, it was Troy State University. It's now Troy University. And we had to come to the legislature to cover the legislature, to understand what the story was and to see what was happening. We sat in the gallery and we watched and we watched and we watched. And sometimes in this process, it's like watching paint dry because you've got a debate, right? You've got an issue on the floor. You've got legislators talking back and forth, debating back and forth. There's what you know to be a filibuster. So even when that happens, there is something going on behind the scenes generally. Sometimes it's trying to work it out to pass a bill. Or sometimes it's working out because the budget isn't quite right and you're trying to negotiate a little bit more for the interest that you have. So you know that, but you come to understand that after all these many years of being down at the legislature. And so, yes, it can be like watching paint dry. And I remember even in college, I thought, don't think this is where I want to be, because we sat and watched without really understanding the dynamics of what was going on. And that process also means you got to talk to legislators to ask what's happening and what does this bill mean and what is your position on a particular piece of legislation. And so over the years, you come to understand that that's what you have to do as a part of whatever your position is, whether, again, you're trying to pass a bill or kill a bill. So I never saw it as dirty politicians, if you will. That really has not been my experience, to tell you the truth. It's really about building those relationships. Now, you've got legislators who, frankly, are, they wield a lot of power. That's why they're there. You have in Alabama the Speaker of the House. In the Senate, you have the Speaker pro tem. And of course, you have the governor or the lieutenant governor. And so when you recognize what this process represents and who is in charge, that really determines the day, the political day. I've not really experienced bad politicians, if you will. I've not experienced, crooked politicians, if you will, but they do exist. Let me just say, I'm not blind to it. They do exist. I think in the years that I've been there, there have been several indictments. Okay. You can choose to carry the paper bag or not. And for those who think they can get away with something, well, that was their choice, and they thought they could. I've seen probably about five African Americans legislators who are not there anymore because they got indicted for whatever those reasons were. One in particular, he just recently went to federal prison because, you just, in politics, as in life, you've got to do the right thing. I don't know how else to simplify that. And if you think you can steer off course and sneak to steer off course because you think something can happen that you can get away with, or you think you can hide money in a place and think you can get it away with it.
Yes.
Listen, some can, many can't. Many can't.
I agree with you. Some people are not meant to be criminals, even though they have those moments in their life where they go and do something stupid.
I call it stupidity. And stupidity means you'll end up in jail. And this particular legislator, Derrick, he is in his 80s.
Wow.
He's spending, I think it's 18, maybe 24 months in jail. And that's not how you want to go out with clearly being among the first African-American legislators in the Alabama legislature. Our first Black legislators were elected back in, I think, the 1970s, early 80s or so. And so we've come a long way. There's no doubt about that.
There's something that
mm-hmm.
One of the things I've always admired about you, Kim, is you're a historian. And being in Alabama, you just tapped into it, knowing when the first African-American legislator was elected. I've heard you talk about Tuskegee. I've heard you talk about Montgomery. I've heard you talk about the capturing the legacy of people. If you don't mind talking a little bit about that. And then what I would really love to know is where that comes from, where that originates within you, that desire because you've told me about bringing my family to Tuskegee, coming to see where the airmen lived, the colleges and, the various institutions. Tell us about that and where that originated in you as a little girl.
I was born and raised in historic Tuskegee, Alabama. Great little town. Tuskegee at that time was a bustling community. It was Tuskegee Institute at that time, and it was a town and gown at that time, with Tuskegee Institute as a driving education force in the country and, dare say, in the world, because of the Tuskegee Airmen and frankly, all of their heroics during World War II. During World War I, we had the beginning of a Black Veterans Hospital. The Tuskegee Veterans Hospital at that time was built literally to treat Black veterans and to train Black doctors. So that was another village for me. And then you had the city of Tuskegee that at that time, you actually had a white mayor, but you had a majority council. You had, I think it was 3 Black council members and 2 white council members. Can you just imagine? And still, as a community at large, meaning Alabama, you still were trying to gain the right to vote. So Tuskegee was an aberration in many respects. And I grew up in that kind of environment. Some of it was a kind of bubble environment because everything happened and revolved either at the VA or at Tuskegee Institute. I mean, everything did. The world came to Tuskegee. Let me just say that. And so experiencing Black doctors, all of my doctors were Black, and they still are for that matter. So I had that as an experience. Many of my parents and their friends of my parents, they were engineers. They worked at the Tuskegee VA, or they were doctors or nurses or executive assistants who worked for leadership that for the most part was African American at the Tuskegee VA. My mother was an executive assistant for the chief of staff at the Tuskegee VA. Now there were white chiefs of staffs, but the majority of the ones I remember were all Black. The institution, the Tuskegee VA, was created smartly, strategically, by Dr. Robert Russell Moton, the second president behind Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee, the founder at Tuskegee. He had the foresight to see creating a veterans hospital to treat the veterans and to train Black medical doctors and nurses and physical therapists, created opportunities to grow a community and yet at the same time help Black veterans and a Black community. And so he forged a relationship with the president at that time and said, I will donate the property if you help and agree to build a veterans hospital. Because what was happening, Derrick, at that time during World War I, our Black veterans, remember, this is segregation, and we're fighting a war overseas. And our Black veterans were dying because they couldn't be treated medically.
Wow. And
so he saw that, but didn't complain about it. He found a solution for it and decided, I can forge a relationship with the president of these United States. He went to the inauguration. He couldn't sit on the dais, but he was there. But the agreement was, you build a hospital, I donate the land, and we have it run and staffed by African-American professionals. So that was a big part of the beginning for a growing Tuskegee that complemented Tuskegee Institute, because at that time we had a John Andrews Hospital where I had Black doctors, I had Black nurses there. That was my experience. And even during times of segregation, Tuskegee still thrived because you had Black businesses too. We had Black grocery stores. We had Black communities. We had both YMCAs. We had recreation centers. So we could grow in our own village and wonder what was going on around us in Montgomery that was staunchly segregated. I mean, there was segregation, let me just say. Many of the businesses in downtown Tuskegee were white owned. The banks were white owned and white run. But you still had an opportunity to build those relationships, to grow together, because you had a VA hospital and you had an Tuskegee Institute. You had no choice but to work together. So Tuskegee's history, notwithstanding, with Booker T. Washington, Dr. Robert Russa Moton, George Washington Carver, the Tuskegee Airmen, Lionel Richie and the like, just a village of history that I dare say not many other communities or cities in the world have that same kind of history that we are so very proud of. There's no question about it. I remember in school growing up, my dear friend Kurt Carter. Now, Kurt and I rode mini bikes together, and we were in elementary and middle school and high school together. We sat by each other in many of our classes. I did not know, though, even in algebra class, that Kurt's mother and father were part of the Tuskegee Airmen history. His father was a DOTA, a documented original Tuskegee Airman. We knew him as just cool Colonel Carter, right? Hey, Colonel, spoke. We knew him as Colonel Carter. Colonel Carter was cool before cool was cool. Let me just say. Colonel Carter would drive in his fire red 55, I think it was, convertible Thunderbird with his aviator glasses on, his bomber jacket, and his pilot hat. That's how I fondly remember Colonel Carter. Mrs. Carter, his wife, was the first Black female to get a civilian pilot's license. So on dates, they would fly in an airplane. Wow. She had a little airplane, and she had a little airplane. And there's a picture. Hold on, I'll show it to you. Hold on. All right. So, can you see this okay?
I can.
So this is like a replica of them on a date. Now, Mrs. Carter would be in the little Cub, the yellow Cub, and Colonel Carter would be in the TU-26. And they're flying over beautiful Lake Martin as a part of their date.
Wow.
That's cool. That's cool.
That's an original date idea. I've never heard that before.
And it's a wonderful story. Love is in the air. Colonel Carter signed it. And somebody obviously captured that painting and gave it to me. Colonel Carter signed it. But I didn't know that they were a part of our history, the fabric of our American history, and certainly the fabric of our Black history.
Sorry, you were still talking.
Mm-hmm. No, I just remember one day, I had an opportunity to go to Colonel Carter's house to interview his wife. Well, now, Derrick, I didn't know Mrs. Carter was who Mrs. Carter was, and she showed me the original pilot's license. She talked about wanting to pursue aviation. Now, at that time, for a Black female, those opportunities, those doors closed, unfortunately for her. But she earned a pilot's license. In fact, there were two women who trained alongside the airmen in the 1940s. So I knew them, but didn't know who they were, didn't know their history until much, much later in life. But how proud for all of us who knew Kurt, the son, to know who his father was. And I remember too, one day, a businessman in the neighboring community he was enamored with the history of the Tuskegee Airmen. And he knew I knew Colonel Carter. He said, Kim, would you just please arrange for me to come and meet Colonel Carter? And I said, oh, sure. So I called Kurt, and Kurt said, okay, meet me and the Colonel. He called him the Colonel. Meet us at the Tuskegee Airmen Museum in the War Room. Well, now, Derrick, We got there. Colonel Carter was there. Kurt was there. He just vividly recounted the day he got off the train from Mississippi. His mama said, I'm putting you on the train. You've got to get out of Mississippi and go and get an education, and don't come home until you graduate. Colonel Carter told me originally he wanted to be a veterinarian, but he also wanted to be a pilot. He said he could see himself in that little Piper Cub, if you will, flying around from farm to farm, checking on the horses and the cows from pasture to pasture. That's
traveling veterinarian. Okay.
A pilot, yes. That's what he really wanted to do. But then he said the call came out because remember now, at that time, there was the experiment, the government experiment. They said Black men and women could not fly. They had no aptitude to fly.
Right.
So they came to Tuskegee. Weather's warm pretty much year round. And literally, the story is told that the call went out on Tuskegee's campus to ask who wants to learn how to fly. And Colonel Carter and the others literally said, well, I want to learn how to fly. And that's his genesis. Now, others were told about what was happening in Tuskegee, caught the train to come to Tuskegee to want to train to be an African-American pilot, to fight and protect our country. Over the years, Kurt told me many stories of Chappie James, Benjamin O. Davis, who, as you know, led the Tuskegee Airmen, the first Black graduate of West Point, I believe. Can you imagine being silenced for 4 years when nobody speaks to you, but you still graduate at the top of your class? Can you imagine what?
It shows the resilience and resolve of who we actually are.
Yeah, yes. No question. So, you know, he was a part of that wonderful Tuskegee Airmen experience. I don't call it an experiment. It was an experience. And so I've since had an opportunity to meet several siblings of the airmen who likewise, it is interesting, Derrick, to me, likewise, these siblings did not know who their fathers were and the history that they had. I say in particular, Spanky Roberts, George Spanky Roberts. The first graduating class of Tuskegee Airmen, there were 5. George Spanky Roberts was the first. And the day that he graduated was the day also that he got married. His wife didn't know that, wait a minute, I don't have on a wedding dress here. You know, I'm kind of looking forward to that. But there was no time for that because afterward, they shipped them off to go to war, to fight overseas. So I've had an opportunity to talk to the daughters of George Spanky Roberts. And it wasn't until much later in their lives, too, that Daddy was a Tuskegee Airman.
Wow.
So it's been a wonderful opportunity to meet them and learn their family's history and be a part of every time, Derrick, every time you see Tuskegee, you stop. True story. Yesterday, I actually had to go and get my car serviced. So I'm there and I'm waiting for the technician to tell me what the challenge was. And so I saw this young Black female. She had on a Tuskegee Airman sweatshirt. And I stopped her. I summoned her and I said, come and sit right here. And she did. And lo and behold, she was a graduate. I say that to say, whenever you see Tuskegee, if I get you a Tuskegee shirt, somebody will stop you. Somebody will stop you and say, what is your connection to Tuskegee? That's the community I grew up in. And now I have to say quite candidly, Tuskegee is not the community I grew up in. We haven't progressed like surrounding communities. It's almost like that bubble to some degree that we grew up in, that bubble is still there. But slowly and surely and progressively, that bubble is changing. A new industry, a new manufacturing industry had just opened. And I understand that there are going to be 2 new manufacturing plants to open too, which clearly will create job opportunities and build revenue streams, but it will also create, hopefully, opportunities to better our schools,
Right.
our housing communities, because it's Tuskegee and it's the area where we live. And all of us, bar none, all of us want to see the Tuskegee that we grew up in and remember. Tuskegee also has now a new president, Dr. Mark Brown, who is a 2-star general. And Dr. Mark Brown wanted to be president of Tuskegee, wanted to be. Went back to school to get a PhD so he could be president of Tuskegee. We're excited about his new leadership, excited about the big plans that he has to return Tuskegee to what we call the glory days. So that has been my experience of knowing a vibrant community with a vast history.
I think you've given that the audience like the clear impression, like you did with me, that you are a historian. And this is just one, I'm just talking about Tuskegee and one aspect of Tuskegee, and you just provided us all of this information, but there's so much more to you, to Kim Davis. I know that you have this thing with golf and the ladies LPGA,
yes,
that you started talking with me about. I do want to hear more about you being interested in media and where your life is heading now. I can understand, given my grandmother was a part of she was the last graduating class that was segregated in Georgetown, South Carolina. So the impact that had on her, the things that she endured. You asked me if I could understand what it's like to walk around on a college campus for 4 years and be ignored. I remember stories of her telling me the things that she endured from that era. So anyway, I want to know more about you, Kim. Tell the audience more about you.
Well, we know that I grew up in Tuskegee. I knew my purpose was broadcasting. I always wanted to be a news reporter. I just always did. And I sought after being a news reporter. I knew that was what I wanted to do. When I graduated from college, I got my first job as a news reporter in Columbus, Georgia. And while I was in college, I started an internship program at the local NBC affiliate, because at that time, there was actually a Black news anchor and reporter, Norman Lumpkin. Norman was my mentor. I remembered calling him one day and saying, I want to be a news reporter just like you. And he took the time to talk to me. I'm 15 years old. I mean, literally, I'm a kid. I'm a teenager, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. And he took the time to talk with me in the midst of a busy afternoon trying to get his story together for the evening news. But he said, well, you come down on whatever day it was, and I'll meet with you and talk with you about what I do. And I did. And so we kept in touch. And when I was in college, I told him, I want to come and intern with you at the TV station. He said, well, we don't have an internship program. And I said, can we start one? Let's do that. That wheel started turning. And he opened that door with the leadership at the TV station to start an internship program. And it's still going on, by the way. And I remembered spending my entire summer in the newsroom, going out with news reporters, writing news copy. Didn't know what I was writing, but there was the Associated Press at that time. So literally, you could rip it off of the machine. And Derrick, we use typewriters. Do you know what a typewriter is? Oh my! But that was my genesis, and that was my beginning. And I say that to say this: after I got my first job working in Columbus, Georgia, Miss Norman called me and he said, "There's an opening here that I want you to apply for." He obviously had made arrangements for me to come and be hired. And I was going to turn it down. I told him, I said, but I just started here. And he said, put in your 2-week notice and come to Montgomery. And I did. And so loved every minute of it. when I tell you every minute, I loved every single minute of being a news reporter. And then I was a morning anchor here, the first Black female morning anchor here in Montgomery, Alabama. That was the time of my life. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Wow, how was that for you? Like being the first.
I didn't recognize it as the first. It was my job. I took my job very seriously. And it was important to me to tell you what the news of the day was, not yesterday's news today. I do find in the morning that many of the stories that air are repeat from last night. And so all you're doing is recycling news. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure if there were something fresh about that story at 10 o'clock that I could tell you about at 7:25. That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I did. I took my job that seriously. I was also a part of a talk show. It was called Focus, as I remembered, and I was responsible for producing a 30-minute show, inviting members of or leadership stakeholders, nonprofits, just whomever was having impact in our community to come and talk to me. And so I did that for several years and thought that I could start my own business. Didn't have a plan, unfortunately. So I say that to say you have to have a plan. In your life, you have to have a plan. You must have a plan. The Lord tells us very clearly, the word is very clear, write it down and make it plain so that you can see your direction, see what you're aiming and aspiring to do. And so I have since started Kim & Company Communications. The first years were very challenging, but I built contracts based on relationships. And so those relationships helped to sustain Kim & Company. And it continued to evolve over the years. And so now it evolved over the years, including politics, because as I mentioned, politics wasn't something I sought after. But I remember now the Democrats were in control, right? And so Wednesday was, after you had a committee day, Wednesday was environmental therapy day or green day. And I remember a legislator saying, Kim, come and play on my team. He was a golfer, avid golfer. And I said to him, Representative, I don't know how to play golf. And he gave me a strange look like, you better learn this game. If you want to come and talk to legislators for 4 hours, having fun and talking and building those relationships. And I took him up on it. I didn't know quite where to go or what to do, but somebody told me too about, you'll love this little tidbit, about an African-American golf instructor at one of our major golf courses. Robert Trent Jones Golf Trail and Golf Course is in the neighboring town. And the director was a dear friend of mine named Adrian Stills. Now, Adrian has a Black history too, in that Adrian, back in the day, now this is the late 1980s, early 90s, Adrian got his PGA card, Derrick. Unless you're really, really good, you don't get a PGA card. But he knew it was, and this was before Tiger Woods, okay? Before Tiger Woods.
Okay.
So, yes, you did have Charlie Sifford and Teddy Rhodes and some others who played, no question about that. They played during the 1950s and 60s. Adrian played, I think, in the 1980s, early 90s. Didn't stay long. He wanted to raise a family. It's tough out there at that level. And then you're the only Black person. But Adrian taught me golf. He taught me how to play golf, is my point. And it was his instruction that I absolutely fell in love with the game, so much so that and I tell folks, had I learned this game when I was 10 years old, I dare say I'd be retired in the working for the LPGA. I mean, I love the game that much. Golf is a great game, and I tell everybody, to build relationships and to be able to be a part of something competitive like that. Golf is the greatest game you'll ever play. It may not be for everybody.
Really?
But I do encourage people, learn the game, at least learn the language of the game, because after the Masters, guess what? people are at the watering hole talking about the shot that somebody missed or the shot that Scotty Scheffler made to win the Masters. He was the last person to win the Masters that way. And I have been. It's a coveted ticket, but there's the thrill of seeing professional athletes at that level, men and women. I'm too old to even think about it, but I play and I try to play competitively with the ladies who I am involved with in golf here in Montgomery, Alabama. We actually started the very first African-American women's golf league in the state of Alabama. We've been around now for 19 years. We actually, this weekend, we play the ladies from Georgia. It's our version of the Solheim Cup, meaning it's what we call the Alabama-Georgia Shootout. Now, Derrick, we will get there Saturday morning. My partner and I, and we will talk trash, and we will go and play some golf, and we'll have a great time. We certainly are playing to win. This is not fun golf. This is not social golf. This is competition at our best, and may the best Alabama or Georgia team win.
Look at that fire coming out of you about this competition. I love it. That is awesome.
Love the game, but let me just say this too. Now, as a part of what I want to do, there is an entrepreneurial component of golf that I am working on. I'm still working on it now. So round 2, if we're able to talk again, I'll tell you about what that represents. But I don't always want to be a consumer of golf. I want to be an entrepreneur and golf. And there are some Black folks doing some amazing things in golf and have had the pleasure of meeting a couple of people not terribly long ago. And so we are going to collaborate on some possibilities to work together because golf is $1 billion plus business. And they want to make sure that at least you are exposed to what those opportunities can represent.
Okay. Kim, I have a question for you. It's a bit of a shift in direction a little bit, but the recurring theme in all of your conversations is a pride and love for being Black and highlighting Black excellence. What does it mean for you and to you to be Black and to be a vocal advocate for the improvement of Black communities? Like, what does that mean for you? Because we met through the 400-year Commission of African-American History. And they're studying, that's Miss Addie Richburg. They're studying between 1619 and 2019.
Dynamic lady. You really have to have her on at some given point and talk to her. She is a dynamic lady.
Oh, she's coming.
For many, many of us. You know, her story is not my story. I mean, she fought in the trenches back during the real civil rights movement. She can tell you some stories. I cannot tell you those same kinds of stories. I didn't grow up in the movement. She did. For me, though, there's a sense of being very proud of where I grew up and the fact that I grew up in a community like Tuskegee that was known for being an excellent community. We just saw it as wanting to continue that spirit of excellence because that was what we were exposed to. And so that's been a part of my fabric for all of my life. No question about it. No question about that. But for me now, there is a different kind of movement or purpose to continue that excellence, but in a way that I think continues to be God-given for me. That's always important and never leaves my fabric either. And I just know that there is a plan that you know God has for your life. He just positioned you to be African American. Okay, how do I use that to some degree and to many degrees my advantage? And I do use it to my advantage when it's necessary to do that. But I want people to see me as not just a Black female, but a woman, a lady of faith first. Certainly someone who's intelligent, but somebody who is also driven and with purpose, and know that the path that I am on now, as I age, and happy to tell you, I am getting older and I'm embracing it, quite frankly.
Yeah, you're building a women's group, or you're building a whole business around it. So
I am.
Yeah,
I absolutely am doing that because you keep living, you'll get older. If you embrace it, it becomes a different mindset and a different experience, one that you can enjoy. I'm not 20 years old. I can't do what I could do at 20 years old, but there are some things that I know I can do as I challenge my body and my physicality at my age. And I like it, quite frankly. This morning I went walking with a friend of mine. We just met on the track at one of our beautiful parks here in Montgomery, Alabama. And we walked for 2.5 miles. We will continue that, and then we will challenge each other to walk 3 to 4 miles every day. And so what happens is your body changes, your body loves it. And so I've embraced that. And I think everybody should, quite frankly. And why not? Tell me why not? Why shouldn't you? You know, you ward off illnesses and you ward off things that you can, quite frankly, prevent. I'm trying to slow it down. I can't stop it, but I can slow it down a little bit by changing my lifestyle, changing my eating habits, changing my workout habits. I work out at night. I have a trainer, but it's something that I enjoy, and I can only encourage others. If your audience is an older audience in 50s, 60s, 70s, embrace aging. You got to get there, Derrick. You keep living, you'll get there.
I know.
Right?
I know.
So,
listen, it's 44, but this is
my dear, embrace it. Absolutely embrace it. And that's my new message. That's my new theme. The gentleman whom I'm walking with is in his 70s. He was a runner. I first saw him as a runner out at the park, and I thought, oh goodness, he started at one point and finished. The park is a very large park, and I knew what his stopping point was, and he was a runner. Now, I don't run. I will power walk. I will do intervals of running. And this morning, so we're out walking. By the way, this is 5 o'clock in the morning. That's my time of the morning. And then we got to the end of the route, and I said, Robert, now let's do an interval of running from point A to point B. And he said, okay. Because he's a runner, it came easy to him and easy to me too, but only because I've been doing it for so long. If I had just started, it would have been challenging and I would have been out of breath. But you have to start somewhere. But Derrick, you have to start. Start small, 15 minutes, just move, just do something to embrace cardio, embrace, now I do strength training. And I think that's a part of what, as we age, we should do as well, because, you know, your body will respond to any kind of challenge, strength training notwithstanding. Trust me when I tell you, I like seeing muscles in my arms. You know, I like seeing the muscles starting to pop through in my legs, right? It's, Derrick, I'm just going to tell you, it's sexy to me. It's absolutely sexy to me. And my trainer, he remembers, and he kids me on a regular basis. He says, Kim, do you remember when you could not do even 5 push-ups? I do remember. I do remember on this one particular machine, we do crunches, you know, crunches like that, crunches. Yeah. I remember not being able to do but 5. And now I'm probably up to 100, 150. Now I do stop. I do like intervals of 50, rest for 5 seconds, do another 50, rest for 5 seconds, do another 50. So whatever the challenge, she says, whatever the number is, sometimes I look at him crazy like, you want me to do what? But I do. It's part of the challenge. It's part of. But
you execute, and I remember, you know, you are in great shape. So obviously, fitness is a part of who you are. But I want to address something, because you said Well, as I travel the country and I speak, I tell people there's three things that they have to do. There are three things. They have to have a dream.
Right.
They have to take action towards the dream.
Correct.
They have to not give up. They have to keep going.
Right.
You've addressed two of those things because you said people have to have a plan. Well, from my perspective, it starts with a dream that you turn into a vision. That vision, you put a plan in place behind those things and you begin to execute on those. You, at your age now, instead of many people that I've met that start to say, oh, I'm getting old, and they'll sit on the couch and they complain about their aches and their pains and all of the things that are happening as you age. It's like there's no one that's escaped aging yet. And instead of complaining about it, you embrace it and are literally building a business around this. And listening to you now, that is a component of that third element of not giving up. It sounds like you're not the person to give up. What does it mean for you to continue this and to help others shift their paradigm so that they also realize that just because you're getting older doesn't mean it's the end of the life, or it's not the end of the contribution? Because Kim, you pour into my life and you pour into others, and you are an amazing relationship builder. You always, in the interactions that I've had with you or been out with you or anywhere, I see that you are that person that will speak to someone and actually listen to build a relationship. You are that person that'll say, oh, I have a friend that does X, Y, and Z. Maybe I can connect you to. You called me one day to say, hey, I met this young man at Home Depot who has X, Y, and Z going on in life. Would you mind talking to him? And I reached out to this random dude like, hey, my friend Kim, you are a relationship builder. You don't give up on people. You don't give up on your visions or dreams, and you continue to go. Where does that come from and what drives you towards that? And then please explain your business or introduce your business as we begin to wrap this up.
Okay. Business is called Kim and Company Communications. I'm going to focus on a new division of it that will solely be on aging. Pure and simple, that's where I am. And so that is my focus now with Kim and Company Communications. And Derrick, let me say, this is not easy. Trust me when I tell you, it isn't easy. You have to build the relationship so that you know that you have people who are in your corner and who will help you, who will call you and perhaps present opportunities for you. It has not been easy, let me just say. But it has been a journey that continues to evolve. And so when you listen to, for me, when I hear God's voice saying, here is the plan, and you embrace that, and you want to embrace his plan because you want to be in his will for your life, that's my focus now. That is my drive now. I can't give up on it because you know what? I don't want God to take it from me. I think he will. He's given you something. Why wouldn't you want to execute on what you know he's given you? And I know that in my spirit, in my heart, I know that. And what I have prayed for, and I believe he has done in answered prayer, is bring the right team together. So together, because you don't want to work in isolation. You want to work as a team. You want to bring the right team together so that together you can see it blossom. Together there is success for everybody. Together there's a piece of the pie for everybody to enjoy. And I think this dream that I have is not new for me. Trust me when I tell you. But the team didn't seem to be in place years ago. Well, now I think it is, and it fuels my drive to want to see it to its fruition. My goal, and it's based on what the word says, and the word says this: he who began a good works in you will see to it to the end that it is complete. My complete means getting back on television. That's my complete. Now, there's a plan to do that, but the plan is also broader than that because television for me has changed dramatically. I mean, it's not the same thing. There's social media, of course. There's StreamYard with what this studio represents. And even as I talk to you, because you've been part of the team and you have shared relationships with people who at some point you've said, Kim, we will meet a couple of people once you are ready to meet a couple of people. I'm not ready right now, but I'm getting ready because at this stage of my life, I mean, it's Derrick, listen, it's the final chapter, you know, and you get ready for the final chapter based on the will being in God's will, embracing this aging process, but wanting to share new messages with others, with what others in my age group and older are doing, because there's some amazing people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s. That's the group I'm targeting, who are doing wonderful, amazing things. And you know what? They don't talk about getting older. It's a fact of their everyday life. But they do talk about embracing it to enjoy this stage of their journey. Those are the kinds of stories that we want to tell, and we plan to tell moving forward.
Beautiful. Kim, as we wrap this up, the final question that I have for you is that if this were the last conversation that you and I had, what is it that you would want me to know, or what is it that you would want to tell someone in my audience? What is the Kim Davis nugget?
God first, pray always, embrace friends and family.
Wow. Every one of those was about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship. Beautiful. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you so very much. Please tell us where people can connect with you, if they want to follow up with anything, and if you ever offer a tour of Tuskegee or Montgomery, please tell people where they can connect with you.
Well, that is still in the making right now. Kim and Company is changing its website. We are evolving to change it right now, but just know right now it's Kim and Company Communications. I'm even thinking about changing the name or dropping off Communications and just becoming Kim and Company. Because remember I said at the start of the show, I have a friend who's asked me to produce 4 podcasts.
Right.
So now that becomes Kim and Company, because we want to talk with those folks who in that age group still, who are doing some, and many of them, I have to say, or several of them, have their own piece of Black history too. One of them is a dear, dear friend. He's in his 70s. He was one of the first Black male air traffic controllers in this country. Can you imagine the stories he can tell?
Oh, amazing.
Just imagine.
Absolutely amazing.
Can you just imagine? And even my brother Bobby is one of the first Black bankers in Alabama, bank presidents in Alabama. Now remember, in Tuskegee, the banks were white owned and operated, but my father had the foresight to embrace that leadership, talk to that leadership, develop relationships with that leadership. So when the white bank president was planning to retire, guess who filled his shoes? But along the way, my brother, during the summer, he would work there as the gopher to go and get mail and just do things that he was asked to do, because you're still having to learn things even at 16. And then from there, he became a teller during the summer after he graduated. And he did that for many summers, even in college. And after he graduated, he became a vice president. And everybody loved him. I mean, everybody loved Bobby Davis, and they still do. They called it Bobby's Bank. That wasn't the official name. But I say that to say the people, and in my circles, there's that kind of history that I certainly plan to share in the communications division of what Kim and Company does.
Okay. I would highly encourage you, my friend, to consider a very specific niche of capturing the legacies of all of these people, the aging people, however you set that demographic, but capture the legacies, because you are a relationship person, because you are a historian, and because you pull out the positives in people's lives. You show them in a great light. So just listening to you talk has been a pleasure. I appreciate you, and I thank you for your time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. And let's do it again soon, okay?
All right.
All righty. Do take care. All righty.
Bye.
Thank you.